We are not waiting for the implementation of these understandings or agreements. We are waiting for victory. We are waiting for the realization of our own goals. What was said on our part and what we promised in Anchorage, these our promises were and are based on our real principal position in this conflict.
Russian forces have shifted into action mode as President Putin publicly demands a decisive wartime victory, accelerating offensive operations and signaling that Moscow intends to press its campaign until clear territorial or political gains are secured. Analysts warn Ukraine may be on the back foot as Russian units push through layers of defense and begin piercing the so-called fortress belt of the Donbass, raising fears that once secure lines could collapse under sustained pressure and that strategic depth is being steadily eroded. President Zelensky reacted with anger as Moscow claimed to have liberated 128 buildings within a 24-hour period, an assertion that Kiev denounced as propaganda while also drawing attention to the intensity and human cost of recent urban combat. Fierce urban fighting continues across the Donbass, with both sides trading heavy blows as President Putin appears to eye new prized possessions in his campaign, a dynamic that is turning populated areas into grinding battlefields and increasing the risk of widespread destruction. Konstantinovka has emerged squarely on Putin's radar as the war intensifies and warnings grow fiercer, turning the town into a focal point of military contestation and a symbol of the escalating stakes on the ground. Ukraine may be losing more territory as Russia presses its latest offensive, with recent movements on the ground suggesting Kiev's defensive depth is being tested and some frontline positions are at heightened risk of falling under sustained pressure. The Russian Defense Ministry reported a concentrated offensive push in the Konstantinovka area, describing intensified combined arms operations meant to break through Ukrainian defenses and secure key terrain that could open routes deeper into Donbass. Konstantinovka forms part of Ukraine's so-called fortress belt in the Donbass region, a line of fortified positions and logistical nodes that Ukrainian commanders have relied on to blunt previous Russian advances and protect strategic population centers. The Donbass matters because it represents Ukraine's industrial heartland, with heavy industry, infrastructure, and economic assets that have long underpinned the country's manufacturing base and therefore carry significant strategic and symbolic importance. Beyond its economic value, Donbass serves as a critical military operational corridor linking Russia to occupied Crimea, a geography that Moscow seeks to control to secure supply lines, enable maneuver, and consolidate territorial gains across southern Ukraine. For Moscow, Donbass also functions as an ideological centerpiece tied to broader ambitions of dominating Ukraine, a narrative Kremlin propagandists use to justify territorial claims while framing the campaign as reclaiming historically and culturally contested lands. Russian sources claimed they had destroyed scattered Ukrainian groups during recent fighting, a characterization reported by Kiev Independent that Moscow uses to portray tactical successes while Kiev disputes and often frames such claims as part of information warfare. Konstantinovka is widely regarded as the main barrier to Moscow's ambitions of conquering the wider Donbass area, a pivotal node whose fall would materially ease Russian operational pathways and complicate Ukraine's ability to defend adjacent sectors. Moscow asserted that Ukrainian forces suffered the loss of around 90 troops along with 22 vehicles and associated artillery assets, figures that come from Russian reports and which Ukrainian authorities typically contest or do not corroborate publicly. The Russian Ministry of Defense listed the destruction of 29 ground robotic systems and 22 unmanned aerial vehicle command posts, citing these as evidence of degraded Ukrainian capabilities even as independent verification of such battlefield claims remains difficult. The offensive reportedly concentrated on the Kramatorsk agglomeration's road network as a strategic axis, with forces seeking to interdict movement, sever supply lines and isolate key urban centers to shape subsequent operations. Ukraine faces pressing manpower shortages and logistic strains in an environment heavily saturated by drones, a combination that complicates resupply, force rotation and the maintenance of layered defenses under constant aerial surveillance and strike threat. Since 2014, Konstantinovka has served as a forward hub for Ukraine's war effort, hosting staging areas, logistics, and command nodes that have made it strategically valuable both for defense and as a springboard for counter-operations. Russian forces have been exploiting bouts of bad weather and wide gaps between Ukrainian positions to advance, taking tactical advantage of visibility and positioning shortcomings while probing for seams to expand their foothold on the battlefield. Putin appears to be eyeing victory in the Ukraine war after unveiling what is being described as one of Russia's deadliest new drones. A Putin aide says Russia is waiting for victory, not agreements, in a sign that Moscow sees military success as the real endgame. Russia is signaling that battlefield gains now matter more than diplomacy as the war enters another dangerous phase. Trump's peace push appears to be faltering as Russia suggests the Anchorage understandings matter less than the fight on the ground.
While many are discussing U.S. President Donald Trump, the Americans, they recall the meeting in Anchorage. It was really about certain understandings. That is, one side had to do one part of the work, go one part of the way, and the other side had to go the second part of the way and do its part of the work.
The Americans proposed this themselves, right?
The American proposed this on the eve of the summit, and then the discussions of the summit took place in this spirit. So, at the moment, one side is still committed to the understandings that were reached in Anchorage, and the other side, apparently, now we can say this, was not quite able to go its part of the way and fulfill the agreements that it promised. We are not waiting for the implementation of these understandings or agreements. We are waiting for victory. We are waiting for the realization of our own goals. What was said on our part and what we promised in Anchorage, these our promises were and are based on our real principal position in this conflict.
Do Western governments realize what they are playing with? Do they remember our nuclear doctrine?
They are playing their own games, which are aimed at finally defeating us. Everyone is talking about it. Now they are sure that they are right, because they feel that now is a time when they can defend these harmful, unconstructive views more intensively. But they are wrong, because they need to carefully look at what is happening on the battlefield, where our troops are gradually, constantly moving forward.
Today, Russian officers and soldiers are courageously and effectively performing their duties during the special military operation. They are liberating our historic lands and defending our people. I am confident that you will prove yourselves worthy of the honorable title of Russian officer and do your utmost to uphold the glorious traditions of our armed forces. I would like to emphasize in particular how important it is to continue to learn the achievements of military science and to develop professionally throughout your service. The prominent military theorist General Mikhail Dragomirov once said that a leader who is dedicated to their cause must keep learning, because without knowledge there can be no victories. Dear friends, you are about to begin your service and take command of military units, divisions, and formations during these challenging times. The current situation in the world is far from stable. Military confrontation in the Middle East continues unabated. The potential for conflict has risen significantly in a number of regions around the world, including in Eurasia. We see that if earlier NATO countries limited themselves to supporting the Kiev regime, which came to power through illegal armed means and a coup d'etat, they are now openly saying in the West that they are preparing for war with us and are increasing their defense budgets. To justify this spending and the radical militarization of their states, NATO and European Union leaders continue, as before, to resort to false claims about an alleged military threat from Russia. The modus operandi of the so-called democratic West is very simple. First, they create threats against our country, forcing us to take the necessary measures for self-defense and protection, and then immediately accuse us of all mortal sins to justify their continued aggressive policy and actions against Russia. We know this all too well. Even after the treacherous attack on the Soviet Union on June 22, 1941, and it was indeed treacherous, the West, Hitler's Germany, attempted to accuse the USSR and Stalin of aggression against what we would today call the collective West. Surprisingly, this is still being discussed in quasi-scientific circles. I would like to emphasize that Russia has consistently advocated for equal and indivisible security for all. 318, we are convinced that this can only be achieved by establishing a multipolar system of international relations and reliably ensuring the military security of every state. At the same time, we are prepared to respond promptly and appropriately to any external or internal threats. In accordance with the state armaments program, the nuclear triad is being systematically modernized. I would like to emphasize that, since the start of the special military operation, there have been significant advances in many types of weaponry. I will mention just one figure. Last year, more than 1,000 types of weapons and equipment were tested in combat conditions, including unmanned aerial vehicles with advanced guidance systems and loitering munitions. It is important to continue supporting our troops as they carry out this special military operation and to help strengthen security in Russia's liberated historic regions. I am confident that each and every one of you will do everything necessary to defend our homeland and ensure its prosperity. On the contrary, all those who want to establish normal relations with us, want to stop the endless race aimed at inflicting a strategic defeat on Russia, they are all those who want normal relations with us. I think that in the end it will work out that way. But so far they still have not gone so far as to launch something from their own territories. They do not understand that there will be a retaliatory strike. Because everyone understands or should understand. Therefore they are trying in every possible way to distance themselves from this. When in the Baltic countries, for example, there are some Ukrainian drones, they still do not point to the Moscow government. They say that these are Ukrainian drones. A mistake, a system failure, work something else. But so far they still have not gone so far as to use their own territory directly, although they are placing military production there. And, of course, all the weapons are flowing in a huge stream into the combat zone. The Soviet Union did everything to prevent the conflict. That is all. And it offered all the European powers to conclude an alliance against the aggressive regime of Germany, against the Nazi regime. But they all evaded it. And they were the first to conclude agreements with Hitler. In 1938, who concluded an agreement? They did, the Westerners. France, Great Britain. The Prime Minister of Great Britain arrived in London, got off the plane, started waving that pact and shouting, "I have secured peace." But true, there were sensible people. In Great Britain they said, well, now war is inevitable. And that is exactly how it turned out. Then they went against the Soviet Union, and immediately, right then, in those very same days, Fascist Germany began accusing the Soviet Union, saying that it was almost the Soviet Union that had attacked. That it was almost the Soviet Union preparing an attack. Nonsense. And now they clearly, whoever came from the front knows. Our guys are pressing them along all sections of the line of combat contact. Along all of them. There is not a single place where it is the other way around. None. So, these drones, strikes on civilian infrastructure, what are they for? Well, to shake up society. Of course, under such massive pressure, when the entire West is working for them, these drones are coming in a huge stream to create some kind of uncertainty in the actions of the Russian armed forces. And what is happening at the front, they put outside the brackets, as it were. But our guys are pounding them there every day. Every single day. We will get where we need to go. I have no doubt. There are no such doubts. Appeals do not create prerequisites. What do they amount to? To creating some kind of conflict potential, on the contrary. So he sent this piece of paper. They are constantly talking about it. We want personalities, we also want personalities. So what? And then 3 days later a strike on Starobilsk? How is that to be understood? How is that to be understood? Well, what kind of prerequisites are there here for personal meetings and negotiations? And then, well, you probably know, and if not, I will say it. Their understanding of the line of combat contact is also very different. Our guys are now practically finishing off Konstantinovka. Well, someone is still sitting in basements there, hiding, shooting back. They say this is a gray zone. Well, a wonderful gray zone. We told them back in 22, let us say, leave Donbass. People do not want to live with you. They held a referendum, they declared their own state a sovereign one. In full accordance with the Charter of the United Nations. The first article of the UN Charter states, every people has the right to self-determination. Thank you.